You're traveling through the unknown, a journey beyond the corners of reality, where the shadows whisper and the chill runs deep. Welcome to the dimension where your deepest fears are given form. This is The Midnight Mystery.
Welcome to The Midnight Mystery. This episode is called, I Return to Earth to Find Everyone Missing. In each episode, we delve into the shadowed corners of our existence, bringing you tales of the eerie, the uncanny, and the downright terrifying. From the realms of the supernatural to the depths of the human psyche, no stone is left unturned, no dark secret left hidden. As the clock once again draws near midnight, prepare to embark on another adventure into the uncanny, the eerie, the horrifying, the midnight mystery. The excitement on the Pandora was palpable. After what felt like an eternity floating amidst the cold, unfathomable void of deep space, we were finally coming home. The tales of our adventures among the stars would be stories for the ages, and I couldn't wait to see my family, to hug my daughter, to share with her all the wonders we had encountered. "Initiating re-entry sequence," announced Captain Reynolds, his voice tinged with a mix of joy and relief. The familiar hum of the ship's engines was a soothing song, a gentle reminder of our impending reunion with Earth. From my seat at the observation deck, I watched the blue and green mosaic of our home planet grow larger. But something was off. "Is it just me, or are the city lights dim?" I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. Lara, our navigator, squinted at the screen. "That's strange. There's no response from ground control either." "What do you mean, no response?" I asked, a tremor of unease pricking at my spine. She pressed a few buttons, her fingers dancing across the control panel. "Exactly that. It's like radio silence down there." "Maybe there's a glitch in our communication system," I offered, hoping for a simple explanation. But as the Pandora descended through the atmosphere, the inescapable truth became increasingly evident. The sprawling metropolises that should have been bustling with activity, streets glowing with neon and moving vehicles, stood dark and lifeless. It felt like we were entering a ghost world. "Look at New York," muttered Alex, our engineer, pointing at the massive screens that lined the ship's control room. The iconic skyline of the city was eerily dark, with only the occasional blinking light piercing the night. Captain Reynolds cleared his throat, drawing our attention. "Prepare for landing at Houston Space Center. We need to get to the bottom of this." The ship touched down with a gentle thud. The silence outside was deafening, punctuated only by the hiss of the Pandora's exit ramp lowering onto the tarmac. We gathered by the exit, each of us clad in our white protective suits. Taking a deep breath, I took the lead, stepping out into the chilling quiet. The vast expanse of the spaceport lay abandoned. The control towers, which should have been bustling with activity, stood as quiet sentinels against the somber sky. "This can't be real," Lara murmured, her voice trembling. "Where is everyone?" "We need to gather as much information as possible," Captain Reynolds ordered, trying to maintain a semblance of control amidst the growing unease. "Spread out. Look for clues, any signs of what might have happened." As we dispersed, Alex and I headed toward the main terminal building. Pushing open the glass doors, we were met with more haunting emptiness. Luggage lay scattered on the conveyor belts, screens flickered with long-forgotten messages, and the echoes of our footsteps seemed almost sacrilegious. "Look at this," Alex whispered, pointing at a newspaper left abandoned on a waiting bench. The headline screamed, "Unexplained Phenomenon, Worldwide Blackouts," and beneath it was a date. Just 2 weeks after our last communication with Earth. "We were so close," I whispered, feeling a hollow emptiness gnawing at me. The gravity of our situation began to sink in. We were astronauts, trained to face the mysteries of space, but nothing could have prepared us for the desolation that had befallen our home. The crew regrouped at the ship, each carrying tales of desolation. Captain Reynolds took a deep breath. "We need to head to a populated city center. We need answers." "Where should we start?" Lara asked. "Washington," I replied firmly. "If there are any answers, we're most likely to find them there." Captain Reynolds nodded. "All right, team, suit up. We've got a long journey ahead." As we boarded the Pandora, the weight of the situation pressed heavily on our shoulders. Our homecoming had turned from a dream into a chilling nightmare, and we were determined to uncover its mysteries. The gentle vibration of the ship subsided as we touched down on the familiar tarmac of the Houston spaceport. The view outside, however, was anything but familiar. There were no ground crew waving us in, no bustling mechanics ensuring a smooth landing. There was only an overwhelming, eerie silence. "Are you sure we're at the right place?" I whispered, peering out of the window at the seemingly deserted expanse. "It's Houston, all right," Captain Reynolds replied, his voice low and edged with confusion. "But where is everyone?" We gathered at the exit ramp, our breath visible in the cold, lifeless air. I adjusted my gear, feeling the reassuring weight of the flashlight on my belt and the communication device in my ear. "Stay alert, team," warned Captain Reynolds, as the exit ramp descended with a muted hiss. "We don't know what we're walking into." Stepping out, the magnitude of the desolation hit me. The vast spaceport, once a hub of activity and innovation, stood silent, as if frozen in time. All the structures appeared intact, not a window out of place, no debris littering the ground, but no signs of life either. "Look at this!" Lara called, pointing to the ticketing kiosk. A screen flashed intermittently, showing a ticket being processed, waiting for a passenger that would never collect. I approached an abandoned luggage cart, bags still stacked neatly, waiting for their owners. One suitcase had popped open, revealing family photos, a child's teddy bear, and a half-eaten candy bar. "This doesn't make sense," murmured Alex, running a hand through his hair. "Everything's in place, just paused, like the world stopped breathing." We began our journey toward the city center, the stillness around us growing more unsettling with every step. Cars stood haphazardly parked in the middle of the streets, doors ajar. Bicycles lay where they'd been dropped, a world in media res. Walking into what was once a bustling cafe, I noted cups of coffee, now long cold, perched on tables. A sandwich, only half eaten, lay discarded. The soft hum of a radio played in the background, broadcasting an unsettling loop of static. "We should stick together," Captain Reynolds advised as we regrouped outside. "No one wanders off alone." Lara nodded, her face pale. "There's something fundamentally wrong here. It's not just the absence of people. It's like life itself has been sucked out." As we moved further into the city, we came across more haunting scenes. A playground, toys strewn about, swings moving ever so slightly in the wind, as if children had just left. An office building, screens glowing with unfinished tasks, chairs still warm from their last occupants. But no sign of a struggle, no indication of panic or evacuation. "It's as if they all just vanished," I whispered, unable to shake off the growing dread. We reached a residential area, where the scene became even more heart-wrenching. Front doors were left open, pets roamed aimlessly, their whines echoing in the silent streets. Inside one of the homes, a dinner table was set, candles burned down to their stubs, plates filled with now rotting food. Lara held up a child's drawing, her eyes glistening. "Look, it's a family portrait, dated just a week ago." The weight of our solitude bore down on us as we continued our exploration. Each corner turned, revealing a new scene of haunting emptiness. "We need to regroup, find shelter for the night, and come up with a plan," Captain Reynolds finally said, his voice heavy with sorrow. We all silently agreed, making our way back to the Pandora. With every step, the reality of our isolation became more pronounced. We were alone in a world left behind, and the darkness we descended into seemed to grow with every passing moment. The weight of the desolate city bore heavily upon us. Each street, each abandoned home was a poignant reminder of the life that had once thrived here. But as we ventured deeper into the urban maze, another oddity began to emerge. "Hey, look at this!" Alex called, his finger tracing an intricate pattern on a lamppost. The design was foreign, an intertwining of geometric shapes and patterns that seemed to dance and move as you observed them. Stranger still, they emitted a faint luminescence, an ethereal glow that painted the surroundings in an eerie light. I approached a nearby wall, where the symbol appeared larger, spanning the entire length. "I've never seen anything like this," I murmured, the tip of my finger hovering close to the glowing design. "Nor have I," Captain Reynolds admitted, his brow furrowed in thought. "They're on everything. The ground, walls, even the cars." Lara, her gaze distant, whispered more to herself than to us. "It's like the city's been marked." We began to notice the symbols everywhere. Some appeared hastily scrawled, as if done in a hurry, while others seemed deliberate, meticulously crafted with precision. The luminescence they emitted varied too, some glowing brightly, others barely visible. "What do you think they mean?" I asked, unable to tear my eyes away from a particularly mesmerizing pattern on a shop window. Lara, ever the linguist, tilted her head, studying them. "It's hard to say. They don't resemble any language or symbolism I'm familiar with." "There's intent behind these," Captain Reynolds mused. "This isn't just random graffiti. There's purpose." Alex, kneeling by a puddle, observed the symbol reflected in the water. "You know, in some cultures, symbols are a way to ward off evil or protect against harm." The silence that followed was palpable. The air around us felt charged, the very atmosphere heavy with the weight of the unspoken. These symbols, these mysterious etchings, were a puzzle. And we were in the center of this enigma, surrounded by a city that had lost its voice, trying desperately to decipher its last message to us. "I think it's clear," I finally broke the silence. "These aren't just markings. They're a story, a warning perhaps. We just need to figure out how to read them." Captain Reynolds nodded, determination in his eyes. "Then that's what we'll do. We unravel this mystery, one symbol at a time." The sun cast long shadows as we navigated the desolate city. But for Dr. Samuels, our cryptologist, the world outside ceased to exist. He was completely engrossed in the myriad of symbols that permeated every surface. "Remarkable," he murmured, eyes darting fervently over a particularly intricate etching. "These are not random. There's a syntax, a structure." Lara approached cautiously. "You recognize these, Dr. Samuels?" He gave a distracted nod. "Not recognize, precisely. But they remind me of ancient glyphs, a combination of various primitive languages perhaps, but with a twist." As days turned into nights, Dr. Samuels's fascination transformed into an obsession. His once pristine workstation inside the Pandora was now a chaotic mess of scribbled notes, sketches, and frenetic translations. The once jovial scholar became increasingly irritable, snapping at anyone who dared interrupt his work. I tried to approach him one evening. "Dr. Samuels, you need to rest. You've been at this for days." He shot me a piercing glare, eyes bloodshot, voice laced with impatience. "Can't you see? It's all connected. These symbols, they're trying to tell us something." That night, as I closed my eyes, an unexpected terror gripped me. Monstrous creatures, neither human nor animal, chased me through a ruined world. The sky was ablaze, meteors crashing down, and the earth trembled with cataclysmic fury. Everywhere I looked, those symbols loomed, pulsating with a sinister energy. Jolting awake, sweat dripping down my brow, I tried to shake off the overwhelming fear. The digital clock blinked 3:17 a.m., but sleep was no longer an option. Lara was already in the common area when I arrived, her face pale. "You too?" she whispered. I nodded. "Those symbols..." Before I could continue, Alex burst in, his face a mask of terror. "They're everywhere. In my dreams. They won't let go." As the crew assembled, it became clear that we were all being tormented by the same nightmarish visions. The creatures, the apocalypse, and always, those haunting symbols. Captain Reynolds rubbed his temples. Deep lines of fatigue etched into his face. "We need to get to the bottom of this. These symbols, these dreams, they're connected." Dr. Samuels, looking even more disheveled than before, stumbled in. "It's a message," he rasped, clutching a sheaf of papers. "A warning. The symbols, they talk of an impending doom, of creatures from another realm." "Are you suggesting," Lara began, disbelief evident in her voice, "that these symbols are a prophecy?" Dr. Samuels nodded frantically. "Yes, and we are in the epicenter. We were meant to see, to understand." The atmosphere grew tense, sleep-deprived paranoia mingling with growing terror. Were these symbols a harbinger of an actual impending doom, or just figments of our strained minds? "We need a plan," Captain Reynolds declared. "We can't go on like this." Lara, her eyes scanning Dr. Samuels' scattered notes, said, "We need to understand these symbols, decode their message. Only then can we hope to counteract whatever power they hold over us." The stillness of the Pandora was broken by a piercing scream. Racing towards the source, we arrived at Eric's quarters, where Lara stood frozen at the doorway. Her face was as white as the papers strewn across the ship's cold metal floor. "Eric!" I called out, dread filling me as I entered the room. But it wasn't the emptiness that chilled me. It was the precision. Eric's uniform was neatly folded on his bed, his boots perfectly aligned beneath. Every surface of the room was covered in those haunting symbols, meticulously etched with an obsessive hand. "He's gone," whispered Alex, his eyes darting across the room as if expecting Eric to appear from some hidden corner. Captain Reynolds' voice was grave. "This isn't just a disappearance. This is deliberate." As hours turned into days, panic set in. We searched every nook and cranny of the ship and the surrounding area, but found no trace of Eric. With his sudden vanishing and the eerie presentation he left behind, trust among the crew began to wane. "Why would he do that?" Lara mused one evening. "Just fold his uniform and disappear?" I met her gaze, a troubling thought forming. What if he didn't? What if someone, or something, made him? The accusatory glances exchanged between crew members grew more frequent. Whispers turned into heated arguments. Our once tightly knit group was fraying, every member suspecting the other. One evening, a manic laughter echoed through the corridors. Following the sound, we found Dr. Samuels in his workspace, surrounded by sketches, notes, and most alarmingly, the same symbols that were found in Eric's room. "They speak to me!" he exclaimed, his eyes wild. "It's all so clear now!" Lara approached him cautiously. "Dr. Samuels, what have you found?" Holding up a tattered sheet filled with translations, he declared, "It's a summoning, a code. These symbols, they're a beacon for it." "It?" Captain Reynolds asked, eyebrows furrowed. Dr. Samuel's voice trembled with a mix of awe and fear. "A cosmic entity, ancient and vast. It transcends our understanding of time and space. These symbols are its call, and it hungers. It feeds on the very essence of life." The weight of his words settled on us. If he was right, then Eric... Is Eric... I couldn't finish my sentence, the implications too horrifying to articulate. Dr. Samuels nodded solemnly. "I believe he was the first to be consumed." Alex clenched his fists. "So, you're saying this thing was summoned, and now it's here, feeding on us?" Silence filled the room. The gravity of our situation was overwhelming. We were not only fighting for our sanity, but for our very existence. "We need to find a way to banish it," Captain Reynolds declared. "We've faced adversity before. We can do it again." Dr. Samuels, though unhinged, was resolute. "I've deciphered the summoning. Perhaps I can find a counter symbol, a way to send it back." The pulsating hum of the Pandora's engines was overtaken by a haunting chant. Drawn towards the source, our footsteps echoed in unison down the cold, metallic corridor. Dr. Samuels, lost in a trance, stood at the center of a grand symbol etched onto the ship's main deck. Candles flickered around him, casting eerie shadows that danced with his every movement. "Samuels, stop this madness!" Captain Reynolds bellowed, his voice echoing throughout the chamber. But Dr. Samuels was beyond reach, his voice rising in a fevered pitch as the ritual reached its crescendo. The very air around us thickened, charged with an unseen energy. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the chanting ceased. From the oppressive silence emerged a sound, guttural and ancient, and with it, a presence. Words fail to capture the monstrosity that unfolded before us. A colossal, shifting mass of darkness, its form constantly changing, eyes, too many to count, glinting with malevolent intent. "It's beautiful," Dr. Samuels whispered, tears streaming down his face, moments before the entity consumed him in a swirl of shadows. Pandemonium erupted. The ship's alarms wailed, its lights flickering erratically. We scrambled for cover as the entity unleashed its wrath, tearing through the ship's innards, leaving destruction in its wake. "We have to get out of here!" Alex yelled, pulling Lara with him as a conduit exploded nearby. "No!" Captain Reynolds responded, determination evident in his eyes. "We fight!" "But how?" I cried. "Look at it! How do you fight that?" The captain's gaze settled on the ship's central core, its blue glow casting a gentle light amidst the chaos. "The core reactor. If we overload it, the explosion might be enough to destroy that thing." "It's our home," Lara murmured, the the weight of the decision heavy on her shoulders. "It won't be for long if we don't act," Alex retorted. The plan was set. Using the ship's dwindling communication systems, we broadcasted a false distress signal, bait for the entity, luring it towards the core reactor. As we readied ourselves, Captain Reynolds turned to us, his voice steady. "Remember, timing is crucial. We detonate when it's close enough, not before." The waiting was torture. Every creak, every distant rumble echoed like a drumbeat of impending doom. Then, with a sound like ripping fabric, the entity entered the chamber, its vastness seeming to squeeze and fold to fit the space. "Now!" Captain Reynolds shouted. I slammed the detonation switch. A rush of energy surged, and the core began to glow an intense white, but something was wrong. The entity, sensing danger, began to retreat. "It's moving away!" Lara screamed. Without a word, Alex sprinted forward, grabbing a loose conduit and hurling it at the creature. The distraction worked. The entity, enraged, lunged at him, pulling itself closer to the reactor. With a final heart-wrenching glance, Alex winked at us. "See you on the other side." The world erupted in light. Silence. When my senses returned, the entity was gone. The ship, or what remained of it, was eerily calm. Alex was nowhere to be seen. Lara's voice, choked with emotion, broke the silence. "He did it." Captain Reynolds placed a hand on her shoulder. "He saved us." We were in the ship's control room, formulating our desperate plan, when Captain Reynolds suddenly interjected, "Someone has to stay behind." We all stared at him, the weight of his statement sinking in. Lara was the first to break the silence, her voice a whisper. "It's a suicide mission." The captain met her gaze, his face resolute. "It's the only way to ensure that the reactor detonates at the right moment." Alex shook his head vehemently. "There has to be another way. Maybe we can automate the process." Captain Reynolds looked around the room, taking in each one of us. "We've tried everything. The systems are too damaged. This is the only way." I felt a lump form in my throat, the weight of our situation pressing in from all sides. "There must be another way," I pleaded. He gave me a sad smile. "There isn't. You all need to leave on the shuttle. Get as far away as possible." "We're not leaving you behind!" Lara declared, her voice thick with emotion. "You have to," he responded firmly, locking eyes with each of us. "For humanity's sake." The frantic preparations seemed to pass in a blur. As we readied the shuttle, the captain gave each of us a personal message, memories and thoughts meant to be relayed to loved ones, should we ever encounter any other remnants of our species. Boarding the shuttle, I couldn't help but glance back at the ship, at our home. The captain stood in the doorway, his silhouette illuminated by the ship's faltering lights. "Remember," he called out, "our story isn't over. Humanity persists as long as you carry its flame. Now go!" With a heavy heart, I initiated the shuttle's launch sequence. As we ascended, the vast expanse of space spread out before us, its cold, indifferent beauty contrasting sharply with the turmoil we felt inside. From the shuttle's viewport, we watched in somber silence as the Pandora grew smaller, its familiar form soon dwarfed by the entity's looming presence. Moments felt like hours as we awaited the inevitable. Then, a blinding flash. The explosion was monumental, a fierce eruption of light and energy that swallowed both the ship and the entity. A shockwave radiated outwards, rocking our shuttle, but we held course, our safety ensured by the captain's sacrifice. When the brightness dimmed, there was nothing left. The Pandora, our home for so long, and the malevolent entity, both erased from existence. Lara's voice trembled. "He did it! The captain saved us!" Alex, his face etched with grief, whispered, "At what cost?" The realization hit us all at once. We were the last of humanity. Our world, our history, reduced to the few souls aboard a tiny vessel in the vastness of space. "We need a destination," Lara murmured, wiping away her tears. "The deep space colonies," I suggested. "They're our best shot." Setting the coordinates, we embarked on our journey, fueled by a mix of hope, grief, and determination. We were humanity's last hope, its final chapter, and we bore that responsibility with heavy hearts. The silence of space surrounded us, but within the shuttle, a new resolve formed. Our story wasn't over. We would rebuild, we would remember, and thanks to Captain Reynolds' sacrifice, humanity would endure. I hope you enjoyed our episode. I'd like to extend a heartfelt thanks to you, our brave listeners. Your presence in this shared journey into the unknown is what fuels our stories. Your fascination is our motivation. Did this episode send chills down your spine? Leave your comments, share your thoughts, your theories, your own midnight mysteries. Your feedback is the beacon that guides us through the uncharted territories of our stories. And if you haven't already, remember to subscribe to our channel. By joining the Midnight Mystery family, you won't miss out on a single chilling tale. As a subscriber, you'll be the first to know when a new episode lurks around the corner, ready to pull you back into the shadowy depths of the unknown. This is the Midnight Mystery signing off, leaving you with a simple reminder. When the clock strikes 12, fear the silence, for that's when our tales come to life. Good night, Midnight listeners, and remember, not all who wander into the dark are lost.